The morning sun beat down on the Sahara Desert, turning the endless sand into a sea of gold. Dr. Han Soo-jin wiped the sweat from her forehead as she checked the readings on her weather monitoring equipment. Something strange was happening in the desert, and she needed to find out what it was. "These numbers can't be right," she muttered to herself, adjusting her protective hat. The temperature patterns she saw didn't make any sense. Some areas of the desert were much cooler than they should be, while others were unusually hot. It was as if the desert itself was alive, breathing in its own mysterious way. Soo-jin had come to the Sahara 6 months ago to study climate patterns. As one of Korea's top scientists, she had expected to find normal weather data. Instead, she had discovered something that made her question everything she knew about deserts. A military helicopter flew overhead, breaking the desert's silence. Soo-jin smiled, knowing it was probably her brother's team on patrol. Captain Han Do-hyun led a special forces unit at the nearby international military base. Having him close by made her feel safer in this vast emptiness. She packed up her equipment and headed back to her research station. The small building stood alone in the desert, powered by solar panels and filled with computers and weather tools. As she walked inside, her satellite phone rang. "Soo-jin, are you seeing this?" It was Do-hyun, his voice tense. "Look at the sky." She stepped outside and looked up. Her heart seemed to stop. Above the clouds, something massive was moving. It looked like a giant crystal, catching the sunlight and breaking it into rainbow colors. As she watched, more crystal shapes appeared, each one bigger than any building she had ever seen. "I see them," she whispered into the phone. "What are they?" "Nobody knows," Do-hyun answered. "They're appearing all over the world. Every major city has one of these things above it. The base is on high alert. Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you." But before Do-hyun could reach her, every screen and speaker in the world came to life. The message was simple and terrifying. "People of Earth, we are the Crystalline Collective. Your planet has what we need. Surrender now." The voice was strange, like breaking glass trying to speak. Soo-jin watched as her computers displayed the same message in every language. The aliens wanted Earth's water, they explained. Their own world was dying, and they needed our oceans, rivers, and ice caps to survive. At the military base, Do-hyun and his team prepared for battle. Their commander, Colonel Lee Sun-mi, gathered everyone in the main hall. "We don't know what we're facing," she told them, "but we know our duty. Protect our people, protect our world." The first attacks came at sunset. The crystal ships shot beams of light that turned everything they touched to ice. Cities froze in seconds. Tanks and planes stopped working when the beams hit them. Earth's militaries fought back, but their weapons couldn't damage the crystal ships. But something odd was happening in the desert. Soo-jin noticed it first. The alien beams seemed weaker here, almost like they were having trouble working properly. When she checked her equipment, the strange weather patterns she had been studying were getting stronger. That night, as the world tried to understand what was happening, Soo-jin made an important discovery. She found old stories about the desert, tales that no one had believed before. They spoke of the desert as a protector, a shield against dangers from the sky. She had thought they were just stories, but now, Do-hyun finally reached her station the next morning. "The base is gone," he told her. "Those things froze everything, but their beams worked differently in the desert. It's like the sand is fighting back." Soo-jin showed him her research. "Look at these patterns," she said, pointing to her computer screen. "The desert isn't just hot and empty. There's something here, something old. I think it might be some kind of ancient defense system." As they talked, more crystal ships appeared in the sky. But this time, something was different. The ships above the desert looked cloudy, less bright than before. Some of them were changing shape, their perfect crystal edges becoming rough and uneven. "They're breaking down," Soo-jin realized. "Something about the desert is hurting them." Before they could understand more, The ground began to shake. The sand around the research station started moving in strange patterns, forming shapes that looked almost like giant circuits. Deep under the desert, something ancient was waking up. The aliens noticed too. Their ships tried to move away from the desert, but it was too late. The sand rose up in great clouds, swirling around their crystal vessels. Wherever the sand touched, the ship's surfaces became dull and cracked. Sujin and Do-hyun watched in amazement as the desert itself seemed to come alive. The patterns she had been studying weren't just weather changes. They were signals, preparations for this moment. Earth's oldest desert was revealing its true purpose, a weapon created long ago to protect our planet. That first day of the invasion ended with a discovery that gave Earth hope. The aliens weren't invincible after all. Their perfect crystal ships had a weakness, and that weakness was as old as Earth itself, the desert sands. As night fell over the Sahara, Sujin looked at her brother. "We need to understand how this works," she said. "The desert isn't just fighting back. It's fighting smart." Do-hyun nodded, his military training mixing with his trust in his sister's science. "Then we'll help it fight," he said. "We'll learn its secrets and use them." Around them, the desert hummed with hidden power. The sand shifted in geometric patterns, forming and reforming like a living computer. Above, the crystal ships retreated, their surfaces scared by their first contact with Earth's ancient guardian. The war had only just begun, but humanity had found its first real hope. In the very place most people saw as empty and lifeless, Earth had hidden its strongest defense. The desert was awake, and it was ready to protect its world. As Sujin worked late into the night, studying the desert's mysterious patterns, she couldn't help but smile. Humans had always seen deserts as bare, empty places. How wrong they had been. The emptiness wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a mask, hiding the Earth's most powerful weapon until the day it was needed. The invasion had begun, but so had Earth's fight back. And it started here, in the endless sands of the Sahara, where an ancient power was finally revealing itself to the world it had always protected. 3 days after the alien ships first appeared, Sujin sat in her research station, surrounded by maps and data readings. The desert had changed. The sand no longer just lay there. It moved in patterns, like waves in an ocean. Her computer showed energy flowing through the desert in lines and circles, just like electricity in a giant circuit. A knock at the door made her look up. Kim Ta-won, a local researcher who studied desert history, stood there with a stack of old books. "I found something," he said, walking to her desk. "These old stories about the desert. They're not just stories." Sujin moved her papers aside as Ta-won opened a dusty book. On its pages were drawings of patterns, the same patterns she had seen in the sand. "These drawings are 5,000 years old," Ta-won explained. "The ancient people who lived here wrote about the desert protecting them from sky demons. Everyone thought they were just making up tales." Outside, Do-hyun and his team watched the alien ships through powerful binoculars. The crystal vessels still hung in the sky, but they stayed far from the desert now. Park Jae-ho, their combat engineer, noticed something interesting about the sand stuck to their boots. "Look at this," Jae-ho said, scraping some sand into a clear bag. When he held it up to the sun, the grains sparkled strangely. "The sand here isn't normal. It's like tiny crystals, but they're all different from each other." Do-hyun took the bag and studied it. Could this be why their ships get damaged here? He wondered. He called Sujin on the radio. "Sis, we need you to look at something." In her lab, Sujin examined the sand under her microscope. Each grain had a unique crystal structure, and when she put them together, they created patterns like the ones in Ta-won's old books. "This is amazing," she said. "The sand isn't just hurting their ships. It's programmed to do it." Ta-won looked confused. "Programmed? Like a computer?" "Exactly." Sujin pointed to her screen. "These crystal structures are like tiny computers. When they come together in the right way, They create energy patterns. The desert isn't just sand. It's the biggest computer ever built. As they talked, the ground shook again. Outside, the sand was moving, forming circles and lines hundreds of feet wide. Above them, one of the alien ships had come too close. Streams of sand rose into the air, swirling around the crystal vessel. Wherever the sand touched, the ship's surface turned cloudy and began to crack. The alien ship tried to escape, but the sand followed it. Through her equipment, Sujin could see energy pulses moving through the desert, guiding the sand's attack. The ship's crystal surface cracked more and more until, with a sound like breaking glass, a piece fell off and crashed to the ground. Do Hyun's team rushed to the fallen crystal piece. It was beautiful but strange, like ice, but warm to touch. As they watched, it started to melt in the desert heat. Ji-ho carefully collected samples in special containers. Back at the research station, Sujin and Taiwan made another discovery. The old books showed maps of other deserts around the world: the Gobi, the Atacama, the Arabian. Each one had the same strange patterns hidden in the sand. They're all connected, Sujin realized. The deserts aren't separate. They're all parts of one big system. That night, they got their first message from other survivors. Scientists in the Gobi Desert had seen the same things happening there. The aliens couldn't go near any of Earth's deserts without their ships getting damaged. But the aliens weren't giving up. Their ships began dropping strange devices into the desert. The devices looked like crystal spiders, crawling through the sand, trying to disrupt the desert's patterns. But the sand fought back, surrounding each device and crushing it. The desert is learning, Sujin said, watching through her computers. Every time they try something new, it figures out how to stop it. Do Hyun and his team found ways to help. They collected the special sand and packed it into shells that could be fired from guns. When the shells hit the alien ships, the sand stuck to them and started breaking down their crystal surfaces. Taiwan spent hours translating more of the old writings. "Listen to this," he said one evening. "The great machine sleeps in the sand, waiting for the day the sky demons return." These people knew. They were keeping the secret of the desert's power, passing it down through stories. As the second week of the invasion began, Sujin made an important discovery. The desert wasn't just attacking randomly. It was sending out waves of energy that matched the aliens' crystal technology exactly. Like two musical notes that clash when played together, the desert's energy made the alien crystals shake and break. "We need to wake up the other deserts," she told Do Hyun and Taiwan. "If we can get them all working together, we might have a chance to drive the aliens away completely." The aliens seemed to know what they were planning. Their ships gathered above the Sahara, trying to freeze the desert before it could connect with the others. But they were too late. Deep under the sand, ancient machines were waking up, sending signals across the earth. In the Gobi Desert, the sand began to move. In the Arabian Desert, ancient patterns appeared in the dunes. In the Atacama Desert of South America, the ground hummed with power. One by one, Earth's deserts were waking up, ready to join the fight. Sujin worked day and night, trying to understand the desert's ancient technology. She learned that the patterns in the sand could be changed, like reprogramming a computer. With Taiwan's help, she began to decode the old instructions written in the ancient books. Do Hyun and Ji-ho turned their discoveries into weapons. They built special grenades filled with the crystal-breaking sand. They found ways to use the desert's energy to protect their vehicles and equipment from the aliens' freezing beams. But the biggest surprise came when they discovered what was hidden under the sand. Deep below the desert's surface, they found chambers filled with crystal machines, built to match and counter the aliens' technology. Earth had been preparing for this fight for millions of years. "We're not the first," Taiwan said, reading more of the ancient texts. "This happened before, so long ago that the only record of it is in these patterns in the sand. Someone or something built this system to protect Earth if the aliens ever came back." As Part 2 ended, Su-jin stood watching the desert at sunset. The sand moved in beautiful patterns around her feet, humming with ancient power. Above, the alien ships gathered for another attack, their crystal surfaces already showing cracks and damage. The real battle was about to begin. But now, they knew Earth wasn't helpless. In the desert, humanity had found an ally older than civilization itself. The sand had kept its secret for millions of years, waiting for the moment when Earth would need it most. And that moment had finally come. The sun rose over a changed Sahara Desert. Where there had once been empty sand, now there were camps hidden in the dunes. Hundreds of people had come to the desert, running from the frozen cities. They found safety here, where the alien ships couldn't follow. Colonel Lee Sun-mai stood at the edge of the main camp, watching the morning patrol return. She had helped build this refuge after her military base was destroyed. Now she led the desert resistance, teaching others how to fight back against the aliens. "Report," she said as Do-hyun's team approached. "The aliens are trying something new," Do-hyun told her. "They're sending smaller ships now, trying to find weak spots in the desert's defense. But the sand keeps stopping them." In her research station, now crowded with computers and equipment from other scientists, Su-jin worked with Ta-won to understand more of the desert's secrets. They had learned to read some of the patterns in the sand, like reading a huge book written in crystal codes. "Look at this," Su-jin said, pointing to her screen. The sand was moving in new patterns, forming shapes they hadn't seen before. The desert is changing its defenses. It's learning from every attack. Park Ji-ho had turned part of the camp into a workshop. He taught others how to make weapons using the special sand. They packed it into bullets, grenades, and even paint that could be sprayed onto vehicles for protection against the aliens' freezing beams. "The sand works best when it's moving," Ji-ho explained to a group of fighters. "Don't just shoot at the ships. Aim for where they're going to be. Let the sand do the work." The resistance grew stronger each day. People came from all over the world, bringing stories of other deserts fighting back. In the Gobi Desert, they had found more of the ancient crystal machines. In the Arabian Desert, they discovered ways to use the sand to communicate across long distances. But the aliens weren't giving up. Their supreme commander, X1, sent a message to all Earth's cities: "Surrender the deserts, or watch your oceans freeze." Sun-mai called a meeting in the main tent. "They're getting desperate," she said. "They know the desert is their weakness. We need to push them back now, before they can destroy our water supply." Su-jin showed them her latest discovery. "The ancient machines under the desert aren't just for defense," she explained. "They're part of a bigger plan. If we can wake them all up at the same time, we might be able to drive the aliens away from Earth completely." The next day, they put their plan into action. Do-hyun led teams to protect Su-jin and other scientists as they worked to activate the desert's full power. Ji-ho and his engineers set up special devices to help direct the sand's energy. The aliens saw them preparing and launched their biggest attack yet. Hundreds of crystal ships filled the sky above the Sahara. They shot their freezing beams at the sand, trying to lock it in place. But something amazing happened. The frozen sand cracked and broke, releasing clouds of crystal dust into the air. The dust swirled up toward the alien ships, covering them in a glittering storm. Wherever the dust touched, the ship's surfaces began to break down. "It's working," Su-jin shouted over the radio. The desert turned their own weapon against them. The battle raged for hours. The aliens sent wave after wave of ships, trying to break through the desert's defenses. But each attack made the desert stronger. The sand learned from every fight, changing its patterns to match and destroy the aliens' technology. In the middle of the battle, Ta-won made an important discovery. "These aren't random attacks," he said, looking at the aliens' movement patterns. "They're searching for something specific in the desert." Su-jin studied the data and realized he was right. The aliens weren't just trying to defeat the desert. They were looking for the main control center of the ancient defense system. If they could find it and destroy it, all of Earth's deserts would lose their power. "We have to protect the control center," Sun Mai ordered. "But first, we have to find it ourselves." The resistance split into teams. Some fought to keep the aliens busy, leading them away from important areas. Others helped Su Jin and Taiwan search for clues in the desert's patterns. Do Hyun's team found the first hint. Deep in the desert, they discovered a place where the sand moved differently. Instead of flowing like water, it spun in tight circles, creating a whirlpool in the dunes. At the center, they could feel energy pulsing through the ground. "This is it," Su Jin said when she saw it. "The heart of the desert's defense system. It's been here all along, hiding in plain sight." But the aliens had figured it out too. Their ships gathered above the spot, preparing for one massive attack. They would rather destroy the whole desert than let Earth keep its ancient weapon. Sun Mai organized the defense. Fighters took positions in the dunes, armed with sand-enhanced weapons. Jeho set up energy deflectors around the site. Su Jin and Taiwan worked frantically to understand how the control center worked before the aliens could destroy it. As the sun set on the third week of the invasion, both sides prepared for the biggest battle yet. The resistance fighters watched the crystal ships gathering overhead, their surfaces glowing with stored energy. In the distance, more people were arriving from other deserts, coming to help protect Earth's oldest defense system. The desert itself seemed to be getting ready. The sand moved faster, forming complex patterns across the dunes. Deep underground, the ancient machines hummed louder, sending pulses of energy through the earth. Even the air felt different, filled with power waiting to be released. Su Jin looked at her brother, then at Sun Mai and the others. They had found the desert's greatest secret, but now they had to protect it. Everything would depend on what happened next. The resistance settled in for the night, checking weapons and equipment. They knew that when the sun rose again, they would face their hardest fight yet. But they weren't afraid anymore. They had the desert on their side, and its power was growing stronger every day. As darkness fell, the sand glowed softly with its own light, showing the patterns of energy flowing through the desert. It was beautiful and strange, a reminder that Earth had mysteries humans were only beginning to understand. Tomorrow, they would fight to protect those mysteries and to keep their planet safe from those who would destroy it. The final battle began at dawn. The alien ships filled the sky above the Sahara Desert, their crystal surfaces shining like 1,000 suns. Below them, the resistance fighters waited in their positions around the desert's control center. The sand moved restlessly under their feet, ready for the fight. Colonel Lee Sun Mi's voice came through everyone's radio. "Remember your training. Work with the desert, not against it. Today we fight for Earth." In the underground control center they had discovered, Su Jin and Taiwan worked quickly to understand the ancient machines. The room was filled with crystals similar to the aliens' technology, but these were different. They were part of Earth, grown from the desert itself over millions of years. "Look at this," Su Jin said, pointing to a pattern forming on one of the crystal screens. "The desert is showing us how to use its full power. It's been saving its strength for this moment." Above ground, the battle started. The alien ships shot their freezing beams at the desert, trying to lock the sand in place. But Do Hyun's teams were ready. They fired their sand-enhanced weapons, creating storms of crystal dust that rose up to meet the alien attacks. Park Ji-ho and his engineers activated the energy deflectors they had built. The devices sent pulses through the sand, making it move in waves that knocked the smaller alien ships off balance. When the ships got too close to the ground, the sand rose up and covered them, breaking down their crystal shells. Supreme Commander X1's voice boomed across the desert. "You cannot win. Your planet's water will be ours. Surrender now, or we will destroy everything." But something unexpected was happening. The aliens' attacks were making the desert stronger, not weaker. Every freezing beam that hit the sand created more crystal dust, and this dust was special. It contained the desert's ancient programming, spreading through the air like tiny computers. In the control center, Su-Jin suddenly understood what was happening. The desert planned this, she told Taiwan. It's been waiting for the aliens to attack. Their weapons are helping us spread the desert's power. She quickly radioed Sunmai. Tell everyone to pull back from the edges. The desert is about to do something big. The resistance fighters moved back just in time. The sand began to move like never before, forming huge spinning towers that reached toward the sky. The towers grew larger and larger, made of sand held together by the desert's strange energy. Do-hyun watched in amazement as the towers connected with each other, creating a network of swirling sand and crystal dust. It's like the desert is building itself a body, he said over the radio. A body big enough to fight the alien ships directly. The aliens saw the danger too late. They tried to move their ships away, but the sand towers were too quick. They wrapped around the crystal vessels, covering them in the special dust that could break down their technology. X1 ordered their largest ships to attack the control center directly. Huge beams of freezing energy shot down from the sky, more powerful than anything they had used before. But Su-Jin was ready. She and Taiwan had finally understood how to work with the ancient machines. They sent a signal through the desert's crystal network, and something incredible happened. All of Earth's deserts responded at once. In the Gobi Desert, the sand rose up in massive waves. In the Arabian Desert, crystal towers burst from the ground. In the Atacama Desert, the earth shook as ancient machines awakened. All across the planet, the deserts combined their power into one enormous force. The alien ships' freezing beams hit this combined power and bounced back, turning their own weapons against them. Crystal ships began to crack and break apart in the sky, their pieces falling like shining rain into the waiting sand. Your weapons cannot harm us anymore, Sunmi transmitted to the alien fleet. Earth is not yours to take. In their desperation, the aliens tried one last thing. They aimed their largest ship at the control center, planning to crash it into the desert and destroy everything. But they didn't understand what they were fighting anymore. The desert had grown far beyond what anyone expected. The sand moved like a living ocean, rising up to catch the falling ship. Instead of breaking apart, the alien vessel was absorbed into the desert, its crystal technology adding to Earth's power. Su-Jin watched on her screens as the desert's energy patterns changed. It's not just fighting them, she realized. It's learning from them, taking their technology, and making it part of Earth's defense system. The remaining alien ships started to retreat. Their perfect crystal surfaces were cracked and clouded, damaged beyond repair by the desert's power. Nex-1's final message was cut short as their command ship broke apart in the sky. As the last alien ships disappeared into space, the desert began to calm down. The huge sand towers slowly collapsed, spreading their crystal dust across the dunes. The ancient machines in the control center hummed more quietly, but they didn't go back to sleep. The desert will stay awake now, Taiwan said, reading the patterns in the sand. It knows they might come back someday. In the days that followed, the world began to recover. The frozen cities thawed under the sun. People came out of hiding, amazed to learn that Earth's deserts had saved them all. Su-Jin and her team stayed in the Sahara, working to understand more of the desert's secrets. They learned that the ancient defense system was even older than they had thought, perhaps as old as Earth itself. Do-hyun and Sunmi helped organize teams to protect the desert's important sites. The resistance camps became research stations where scientists and soldiers worked together to learn from what had happened. One evening, a month after the battle, Su-Jin stood watching the sunset with her brother. The sand moved gently around their feet, forming small patterns that glowed in the fading light. "Do you think they'll come back?" Do-hyun asked. Su-Jin smiled and pointed to the desert stretching out before them. "Maybe," she said, "but Earth is ready now. The desert is awake, and it's stronger than ever. This is just the beginning of understanding what it can do." As darkness fell, the desert glowed with its own soft light, showing the energy still flowing through the sand. Earth's oldest guardian had revealed itself at last, proving that the emptiest places could hold the greatest power. The invasion was over, but Earth had gained something more than just victory. It had discovered a part of itself that had been hidden for millions of years. The desert wasn't just a wasteland anymore. It was a shield, a weapon, and a reminder that Earth still had mysteries waiting to be discovered. And somewhere in the endless dunes, the ancient machines kept working, ready to protect their world again if they were ever needed.